Good morning. Thank you, Eli. And good morning, Washtenaw County. Yeah, I'm Michelle Deatrick. I'm the founder and chair of the first ever DNC Environment and Climate Crisis Council. I want to give a big welcome today to my colleague, Pete Lee, who is the council's director of Asian American and Pacific Islander engagement, vice chair of the Oregon Democratic Party, and a crucial member of our team at the council. Thanks for being here, Pete. The council was formed by activists and organizers for activists and organizers like you. And in our 2 years of existence, we've accomplished a lot. We helped draft and strengthen the National Democratic Party's platform on environmental issues. We organized environmental voters. We helped to win back the Senate, and we helped to elect Joe Biden. And Joe Biden ran as a climate champion, and we desperately need climate champions right now. Just look around. Nationally, over 40% of Americans live in counties that were hit by the climate crisis in 2021 alone. More than 80% lived through an extraordinary heat wave last year, and at least 650 people died in the US due to the climate crisis, a number which tragically is only going to climb. The cost, the human cost, is incalculable. The economic cost was over 104 billion. And this one really stuns me. I just came across this last night as I was preparing to talk with you today. Nearly 17 billion is spent on healthcare every year, healthcare that is needed due to fossil fuel pollution, while the oil companies are raking in 5 billion in profits. So that's a national overview, and we've all heard about the Colorado wildfires, but we also don't have to look outside our own county to see the impacts, as Mayor Taylor and Congressman Dingell and Senator Irwin have noted. What happens nationally happens right here. Smoke from Western wildfires darkened and polluted our air. Last summer's extreme storms damaged tens of thousands of homes in Michigan, with flooding here in our own county of homes and streets in Ypsi and Superior Township and parts of Ann Arbor. So the climate crisis is not coming, it is here now, and we all know that. Our Democratic leaders here in Washtenaw County have shown today that they not only know it, but they are delivering on climate and environmental justice. And there's exciting work happening with Congresswoman Dingell's significant contributions at the national level, Senator Irwin and our state reps, but it's also happening at the county commission. I think Commissioner Schenck is here. I thank you for her leadership on that, and in townships and in small villages as well. But sadly, too many in Washington deny that. And that's why we really need to support and advocate for President Biden and the Democratic Party to continue to tackle this crisis head on. So Joe Biden made fighting the climate crisis a defining issue of his administration. On his first full day in office, he rejoined the Paris Agreement, shut down the Keystone Pipeline, and set a course for the US to tackle the climate crisis at home and overseas. Including these key commitments. Oh, and by the way, I'll be sharing lots of facts and figures. At the end of this, I'll put some links into the chat so that you'll have some reference documents to go back to with a lot of this information. So one of the commitments that is super important was for 40% of federal climate money to be spent in the frontline communities, disproportionately Black, Brown, Indigenous, and less resourced, which bear the brunt of the climate emergency. Committed to a 50% reduction in US greenhouse gases by 2030, elimination of all carbon emissions for electricity generation by 2035. That's a really big deal because electricity generation is the second biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the US, right after transportation. And an end to fossil fuel subsidies to federal subsidies to fossil fuel corporations. We spend billions every year in domestic and international subsidies to these companies, taxpayer dollars that are spent to poison our air and our water and our future. And it's just got to stop. The desire to do that goes back to President Obama. We need to make it happen. So I'd like to talk about a hopeful thing about some of President Biden's appointments. He's made key climate and environmental justice appointments, and just a couple examples of many, many. Deb Haaland is our Secretary of the Interior, the first Native American to serve as a cabinet secretary. Michael Regan as head of the EPA, where he is intentionally and effectively wielding broad regulatory powers to achieve President Biden's agenda, using rulemaking authority to deliver on greenhouse gas emission reductions through new vehicle emission standards, new rules to reduce the methane emissions. As you know, methane is a far more potent greenhouse gas than even carbon dioxide in the short to medium term. So more, the administration has an all of government approach to making appointments who are climate oriented, who see the world through a climate lens of climate and environmental justice. And it really matters because the new administration had 4,000 some appointments to make throughout the government. One of my favorites, we won't go through all 4,000, but is Michigan's own Brian Newland, the former president of Bay Mills Indian Community, who also served as a member of our DNC Climate Council's Policy Committee. Brian is now the Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs at Interior. Another place where President Biden's appointments are making a huge difference, and we'll see this unroll much more over the next year to 2 years, is at FERC, F-E-R-C, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which approves and regulates interstate gas and oil pipelines. There's big potential for positive needed change here. We've got a new Democratic majority in the commission, new chair Richard Glick, whose priorities include a new policy to consider climate change impact and environmental justice impacts in all project approvals, and especially related to natural gas infrastructure. I put natural gas in quotes. That's one of those places we got to message differently. It sounds so nice, natural gas, but arsenic is also natural. And natural gas is mostly methane, going back to methane. So, the truth is we need to transition away from extracting fossil fuels and move to renewals urgently, with the UN Secretary General himself calling for an end to fossil fuel exploration and production. So FERC has the potential to be a big impact, but Glick is up for reconfirmation in his seat on FERC by the Senate in June. So stay tuned on that. Turning a little bit to what's happening with our foreign policy, thanks in part to US participation and leadership at COP26 in Scotland, a huge contrast to how we acted about COPs under the person who was our former president, and in part to the eloquent and effective work and words of the Global South and of climate and environmental justice activists. The world set goals at COP that set committed countries to accelerate on phase down of fossil fuel subsidies and a phase down of coal reliance. These are not enough, make no mistake, but they are historic firsts at a COP. And while the deal that we negotiated there does not bend the global heating and emissions curve nearly enough to put us on a target for the Paris Agreement of keeping global heating below 2 degrees Celsius, sadly, we are actually most likely on track for 3 degrees of warming, according to most modeling, which is kind of horrific. We're at 1.1 degrees right now, and it's already really bad. Nevertheless, COP26 did greatly accelerate the commitment by all 197 countries to come back with stronger targets to the next COP, which is next November in Egypt, instead of waiting for 3 more years, which had been the original idea. So turning to legislation, President Biden and environmental champions in Congress, like Congresswoman Dingell and others of our Michigan delegation, have also worked very hard on legislation to address the climate crisis. As you know, and as Congresswoman Dingell mentioned, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which passed in early November, does contain some crucial investments in the environment, environmental health, including $55 billion for clean water, replacing a significant portion of the nation's lead service lines, a huge issue of human rights, environmental justice, and remedying human tragedy here in Michigan and elsewhere. And an issue near to my heart as a member of both 2 unions, it creates good union jobs at the same time. $1 billion for Superfund site cleanup, because we have a huge backlog of site cleanups that need to be done. And crucially, investments in our national electrical grid so we can get renewable energy from where the wind is blowing in Michigan or the sun is shining in California to where it's needed elsewhere. So it's clear the Build Back Better plan is the congressional climate initiative, and would be the single biggest investment in fighting climate change in our nation's history ever. So I was so glad to hear Congresswoman Dingell talk about it. The vision of Build Back Better must be achieved through legislation and some executive action. It is not sufficient to address the climate crisis or to do America's part. And it's not perfect. This is legislation. There are compromises, but it is a major, major historic, unprecedented step forward. As you know, after it passed in the House, it stalled in the Senate. But the good news is that all indications are Congress will turn back to this after taking up voting rights legislation, because we need the Senate to act and act now. The climate crisis is not waiting for legislative or scheduling. So we need the Senate to get the president's back and fulfill the promise that he ran on and that the party stands for. So Build Back Better has over 130 climate provisions. And I will at the end share with you a wonderful document from the Sierra Club, which lays them all out. I'm going to highlight a few, which address the really transformative changes it would make in clean transportation, clean water, clean electricity, land and biodiversity protection, and energy smart buildings. It would save the average family $500 a year in utility bills. That's how Democrats deliver. It would make it $7,000 cheaper to put solar on the average family's roof, let you weatherize your home for up to $10,000 less, ensure frontline communities and nonprofits could put in wind and solar for 30 to 50% of normal cost. This one's crucial. Reconnect neighborhoods in Black and Latinx communities that were divided by highways back in the 50s and 60s, reinforcing systemic racism and spurring pollution and causing asthma in those communities. It would jumpstart the transition to electrical vehicles, giving thousands of discounts on them and building 500,000 EV charging stations and creating, again, good union jobs here in Michigan. Thank you to Congresswoman Dingell for her leadership on this. And it would build a civilian climate corps. So we cannot afford further delays or attempts to water down the president's historic commitment to tackling the climate crisis. And this is really a vastly popular initiative. For all the efforts of the GOP to undermine it, support for Build Back Better as a whole has remained steady at just over 61% from the beginning. Even true, when you explain to people the right-wing arguments, they still will support it and very strongly, which is not surprising. Nearly 70% of Americans, that includes a lot of independents and Republicans, are very or moderately concerned about the use of fossil fuels. So thinking ahead to November 2022, as we all are, it's clear that voters want the US to demonstrate climate leadership and tackle the climate crisis. And so when the time comes, which will be very soon, I urge all of us to work hard to advocate and push for the passage of the voting rights legislation that Congress is turning to, because voting rights are environmental justice rights. Voting rights are climate justice rights. And then when we turn to Build Back Better, please, when Senator Schumer and Speaker Pelosi are working hard to get that passed and agreement between House and Senate versions, mobilize your friends, your family, your community to make calls, text senators, urge them to immediately pass. And if you connect with the council, and I'll drop links to let you do that, we'll be putting out calls to action on that. There are a couple other significant federal Democratic initiatives that I'm really excited about. The council is working hard to support the agenda and work of the Congressional House Oversight Committee. That committee is doing really exciting, transformative work to hold the fossil fuel industry accountable for decades of myths and purposeful disinformation. They held a hearing in October, which included calls to Exxon and BP and Shell and Chevron. Katie Porter got on their case, Congressman Khanna got on their case, Congressman Maloney was powerful. And then they followed that up with subpoenas for important documents that about showing, getting some sunlight on exactly what big oil has been doing. Meanwhile, some Democratic state attorney generals are filing suit against big oil companies along the same lines as the big tobacco suits. So stay tuned for that. There will be more. And President Biden is using the power of executive action, using the massive power of the purse to transform federal procurement and purchasing policy. This was announced in early December. Also, federal government's going to stop buying gas-powered vehicles by 2035 and transition to 100% light-duty electric vehicles by 2027. And there's a lot more to it. This really goes to what Congresswoman Dingell was saying, that like we need to get the word out there, because President Biden's administration has also reinstated many of the 100 environmental measures that the former president rolled back. It's huge. Just getting back to the status quo before the former president is important. And so there are ways to move toward the Build Back Better vision, even without legislative action, but we desperately need that legislative action because we're at a tipping point. We're actually at many tipping points on a global scale. The crisis is here, the urgency to act is now. And finally, as you know, Democrats need to win big in 2022 and 2024. And in terms of climate and environment, the gains we're making are in grave danger, will almost certainly be reversed if we don't. So that is why I'm so grateful to you for your work to elect Democrats and to elevate these crucial issues. Nancy Pelosi said something that really rang true to me at a DC event in December. She said, "We always say this is the most important election yet." And I think coming on the heels of the first anniversary of that terrible insurrection in DC, we know this is truly the most important election to date. So we say it and it's true. And in that spirit, again, I'd like to invite you to join the Climate Council. You can find us on Twitter at DNC Climate. I'll put a way to join us by text into the chat. And looking forward to working with you for victory in 2022 and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle.